Okay, so your lesson on February 26th was over decimal fractions, tenths, and hundredths. And you started out your lesson by going over the learning target and the success criteria. You spoke it to your students, and then your students repeated it back. You reviewed the hundreds flat and the 10 rod on base 10, and you let them know that 10 rods make 100 flat, make a 100 flat. I love the way you use the smart board to show the math. So you showed that 1/100ths equals 10 1/10ths. I like the way that you use the Elmo and the smart board during your lesson throughout the whole time. And then after you did your review of the 100 flat and the 10 rod, you pass out the decimal place value chart and you ask the students what is a fraction. You listen to their answers. You showed them that as we move from the ones, the tens, the hundreds, you get bigger. The place value gets bigger. And then after the ones, if you're going towards the right, you show them that after the decimal point, the numbers are less than one. And then you ask them, what does that mean if it's less than one? Is that a bigger number or a smaller number? And students were able to say it's a smaller number. You pretty much focus your lesson on the tenths, hundreds, and thousands, but you needed to only focus on the tenths and the hundreds because that's what the standard required. And then throughout your lesson, some of the students seemed confused, and some of them were not engaged. I'm not sure if it was because they were confused or you did most of the talking and they just didn't have anything to do. So they just seemed um, not engaged. So um, for the next time when you teach this lesson, you need to make sure you have manipulatives or something online that they can do to practice while you're teaching the lesson. And then just make sure you stay on the standard, which is the tenths and hundreds, and showing the equivalence of the tenths and hundreds, like saying, for instance, writing on the board, you can put 4 over 10 and then show that it equals zero point 0.4. So 4 tenths equals zero point 0.4. And you can also show the 4 tenths, like 4 over 10, and you multiply your numerator and denominator by 10, and that will equal 40 100ths. And you would show how the tenths equals the hundreds, like 44 tenths equals 40 100ths. So that's what the standard states. And if you focus on that, then the students wouldn't be as confused. And then if you had some manipulatives in front of them or online, then that would keep them more engaged and they will probably be less confused. Okay, it's on. All right, so the purpose of the coaching session is just for us to come up with a plan of what we want to do for the students during math from now until the beginning of the school year, or no, now until the end of the school year and possibly next school year. So that's the purpose, just to see how we can integrate technology and to improve student achievement. Okay, one question. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst lesson you've taught and 10 being the best, how would you rank that lesson? So think of a lesson you've taught this school year. Okay. How would you rank it?
Um, Fractions, converting fractions to decimals.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably a challenging concept.
Mm-hmm. So what number would you get it? 1 being the worst, 10 being the best.
I'll give it a 7, which is a pass.
A 7?
A barely pass mark.
Okay. So what pleased you about that lesson? Well, what did how did the students respond to the lesson?
Um, because we had the background knowledge or foundation of what fractions are and equivalent fractions, so that part of it was easy. But then comparing fractions with in base 10, for example, fractions with denominators of 10 and denominators of 100, that was kind of like a new concept to them. And so that was a little bit challenging.
So it was hard for them to do?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, that was because it was hard for me to do it. It wasn't hard for me to do, it was just hard for me to explain. You know how you just know something and you've forgotten how to teach it. Teaching something is different from, knowing something.
Yeah.
I haven't had to do this for years, but everybody knows how to,
Yeah.
Yes, so
No, I
that's
get it.
the teaching it.
I get it.
It's trying to make children who haven't heard this concept before understand it better. So you're actually really like coming down to the basics as a teacher.
Okay.
To get that.
I get that.
Some of us were not taught this way.
Okay. What would you want your students to be doing differently if that lesson was at a 10?
Using more manipulatives, the concrete model, and then we go into the representational before, the abstract, which I was doing.
Okay. So you would want them to use more hands-on manipulatives.
Correct.
And on the computer, because they have virtual ones too. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So how would you be able to measure that change? Like, instead of like when you just taught the lesson without the manipulatives and without the virtual ones, how would you measure that change? Like, do you see it as reachable?
Of course.
Okay. And then how would you incorporate that into the lesson?
Just get more manipulatives. Get the manipulatives. Or they use they use the virtual manipulatives. Yes.
So then, would you have them do that like as you're teaching, or you show it to them first and then you have them practice on the manipulatives?
So show it to them first. I like the modeling part. Show it to them first, and then we'll do a whole group practice.
Okay.
I'll just walk around and see the folks who are able to do it on their own, and then those that I need to pull aside to do that.
Okay. Would you ever have them work with each other, like with the partner?
Yes.
Okay. So, okay. Do you want that to be your goal? Like, do you want your goal to be using more manipulatives, whether it's hands-on or virtually, and then integrating any other type of technology?
Yes.
Okay. So I think certain technology you could integrate within the math lesson or after the math lesson for practice would be the Khan Academy Math and the Khan Academy Mappers, because that will help them practice the math skills and the concepts that you are teaching that day, that week, and what they've already learned previously, so that they can retain that knowledge. Okay. And then you could actually use Khan Academy Mappers during your math skills time or the intervention time in the mornings, and then the Khan Academy math, you can use that during center time whenever you have time for centers, because I know it's kind of hard to get centers. So that would be a good way. And then obviously your manipulatives can be done during the lesson. Okay. If you hit that goal, which is integrating more technology and integrating more hands-on and virtual manipulatives, would that really matter to you?
Yes.
Yes. What teaching strategy can you use to hit your goal? So what teacher strategy would you want to use to foster more student engagement, more like students talking about the math and showing the math, and then practicing on the computer?
Does it have to be one or the other, or you could do all three?
You can do all three.
Yeah. all three of them as it becomes obvious and necessary for the class to understand.
Okay. So we're going to come up, like during this class, during this semester, we will come up with different strategies and ways to implement and integrate more student engagement, more hands-on learning, more virtual learning, and implement the technology programs in order to meet the goal, which is to help them learn their math better and be able to solve real world problems and be able to actually show their work and communicate what they're thinking.
Their work, their thinking, yes.
Okay. So that's our next steps. And we will have another meeting before March 31st.
Before March 31st.
Yes. Okay.
Just let me know when.
All